All right, if you're a project manager, you live and breathe by the PMBOK guide, right? Well, it's changing. Again, today we're going to unpack the brand new 8th edition. What's different? And more importantly, what does it actually mean for you and your projects? Okay, so to really get what's happening now, we have to take a quick step back. Because for a little while there, project managers were kind of stuck, caught between two completely different ways of thinking, thanks to the last couple of PMBOK editions. On one side, you had the 6th edition. It was super prescriptive, right? It was like a cookbook with exact ingredients and steps, the famous ITTOs. It told you exactly how to do things. But then, bam, the 7th edition comes along and flips the script. It's all about these flexible, big picture principles called performance domains. And that, created this real tension. Are we supposed to be chefs following a strict recipe, or are we artists guided by a philosophy?
Well, guess what? The 8th edition shows up and basically says, hold my coffee. This isn't just another tweak. It's this brilliant move to bring those two worlds together and solve that very problem. It's not about choosing sides anymore. And you don't have to take my word for it. The guide says it right there in black and white. It's all about taking the best parts of previous editions. So the key word here is integration, not replacement. They're building something bigger and honestly a lot more useful. So let's jog our memory for a second. The ITTOs, right? Inputs, tools and techniques, outputs. This was the absolute core of the 6th edition. All those nitty-gritty details. They gave you the ABC for every task. Super, super useful, but man, could they feel a little restrictive sometimes? And then, on the other hand, you had the performance domains from the 7th edition. And this was a really cool idea, right? It shifted our focus to these interconnected areas, things like stakeholders, team, delivery, all focused on one thing, delivering value. It was the big picture what and why. But it kind of left a lot of us wondering, okay, but how do I do that? And this is where the 8th edition has its big aha moment. It looks at the granular how from the old ITTOs and the strategic what from the performance domains. And it just asks this really simple but brilliant question. Why not both? Why can't we have them working together? And that right there is the magic trick of the 8th edition. It literally integrates those detailed processes inside the high-level performance domains. It's embedding that practical how right into the strategic what. It's giving us the whole picture, finally, in one place. So you're probably wondering, what does this new structure actually look like? Well, let's peek under the hood. It's broken down into 4 main sections that make the whole thing way more practical. First, you've got the project management performance domains, then a huge focus on tailoring. And after that, you get these dedicated sections for inputs and outputs, and for tools and techniques. These 4 things, they're the new pillars of the guide. So let's start with the performance domains. The way to think about them now is as this integrated system. They're all these related activities that work together to, successfully deliver your project and get the results you're after. Next up is tailoring, and man, they are really doubling down on this. This is probably the key to making the whole guide so much more practical. It's all about you, deliberately adapting your approach, your processes, to fit your specific project, your company, your industry. No more one-size-fits-all. And this is where you really see the new flexibility. Those sections on inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques, they're now basically a giant toolbox. The guide is super clear about this. These are just options. It's a list of things you can use, not a mandatory checklist you have to follow. Huge difference. Okay, so holding this whole new structure together is this really important idea, a philosophy really. It's all about how principles and performance connect. This is the glue that makes it all work. The guide itself defines a principle as, a fundamental norm, truth, or value. Basically, think of principles as your compass. They're the true north that guides everything you and your team do on a project. And what's so important to get is that principles aren't really about processes or flowcharts. They're about people. They're what shape your mindset. They guide how you behave as a professional, how you show up every day, how you lead your team, and how you make those tough calls. And here's where it all clicks together. The performance domains, those are the playing fields. They're the arenas where you actually put those principles into practice. It's where things like stewardship, collaboration, and focusing on value stop being ideas and start being things you actually do. So here's a super simple way to think about it. The principles, they're your foundation. They're solid, they guide your mindset. And the performance domains, that's the house you build on top of that foundation. They're the structure, the big areas where you take action and get things done.
Okay, that's a lot of theory. We've talked structure, we've talked philosophy, but let's bring this back down to earth. The big question is, so what? What does any of this actually mean for you when you walk into work tomorrow?
Well, the advantage is huge. First, you get to focus on outcomes, not just ticking off boxes in a process. Second, this thing is built to adapt. Doesn't matter if you're doing agile, waterfall, or some hybrid mix, it works. You're getting a much more practical and complete framework. And there's way better guidance on how to tailor your approach for each specific domain.
When you boil it all down, the goal was just practicality. The whole point of the 8th edition is to be a guide that's flexible enough to fit most projects, most of the time. Think of it less like a rigid rulebook and more like having an expert mentor sitting on your shoulder.
And that really leaves us with one final crucial question. This new guide puts the power of adaptation squarely in your hands. So, looking at your next project, what's your plan? How are you going to tailor your approach?